What's good? Welcome back to the Pop-Off Podcast, a conversation show about the Chicago Bears. I just wanted to come on for 15, 20 minutes tops and talk about the Chicago Bears and their Sunday afternoon, September 21st, 2025, and the turning of a new page. Caleb Williams, his coming out party with Ben Johnson against the Dallas Cowboys today on Fox, nationally televised game. The entire country tuning in to watch the Bears after their borderline disastrous 0-2 start and how they would respond against a Dallas Cowboys team with a defense that, let's just get this out of the way early, is one of the worst in the league. They traded away Micah Parsons less than a month ago at this point, and it's kind of had this waterfall effect amongst the rest of the team. You have guys like Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland and Malik Hooker who are well past their prime at this point, it looks like, and a defensive coordinator and Matt Dweeberflus, who is making his return to Chicago on Sunday afternoon and was borderline embarrassed once again. Another moment in that stadium where he was unsuccessful, despite the fact that he actually had a pretty good record at home at Soldier Field during his time as the Bears head coach, but we're well past that. There's been a lot of conversation about the Bears over the last 2 weeks, specifically about Caleb Williams, especially after having a primetime game on Monday night against the Vikings, where everything looks great the first drive, and then the rest of the game was pretty much downhill from there. You have the J.J. McCarthy coming out party, and we've seen what's kind of happened to him in the last week and a half or so since then. Didn't play today as the Vikings offense looked better than it has in the previous 2 weeks with Carson Wentz at the helm against a pretty porous defense in the Bengals. But nevertheless, this is about the Bears. And I just wanted to get a couple of thoughts off my chest because this is the happiest that I've been as a football fan, not just as a Bears fan, but as a football fan in my 27 years of life. And that's pretty sad because it's week 3 of the regular season, but that's the reality, is that we won because of a quarterback today and not despite a quarterback, which is what it felt like in 2018, even when Trubisky was playing, I'd say above average, somewhere in that realm. Caleb was one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL today. Is that his ceiling? I'm not sure. I don't know if he can get to that consistently enough, but I'm a hell of a lot more confident that he can get to that level with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator, right? This is a guy who was a staple for the Detroit Lions over the last 3 years and really renovating and reinventing and creating a new generation of what we perceive to be the Detroit Lions. Because the previous 20 years of my life, they were kind of the laughingstock of the NFC North. You had Matt Stafford, you had Megatron, but nobody ever took him that seriously. Ben Johnson was integral to people taking the Lions seriously. The trick plays, the innovation. He had all the talent in the world. I think Brady talked about it today on the broadcast, but when he was talking to Ben, Ben said, that's a 5-star job. Like, you have an elite offensive line, excellent weapons, a guy who separates like crazy in Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who takes the top off the defense in Jamison Williams, and then 2 damn good backs in the backfield in Montgomery and Gibbs, and then a quarterback in Goff who is very capable of playing point guard. And that's ultimately what you need to do in a Ben Johnson offense, is get the playmakers the ball. And in order to do that, you're going to need a little bit of time back there in the pocket. And guys like Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, Jonah Jackson, who's now with the Bears, Taylor Decker, they can protect, right? And I think that was another bright spot for the Bears today, is that offensive line, they're starting to click a little bit. If you think about it, we have 2 tackles who we've drafted, and Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright on the outside, who are protecting that pocket for Caleb from that side. But then you're bringing in 3 new interior offensive linemen, and Joe Thuney from the Chiefs, Drew Dahlman from the Falcons, and then Jonah Jackson from the Lions and the Rams. And that takes time to mesh, right? Like, it's, if you were to go out with 3 new dudes over the next 2 weekends, you guys might not put out your best outings together. You're going to be more comfortable with the guys that you've known your entire life. So we have to grant that kind of time for chemistry to develop, even amongst the offensive line, because it is a very nuanced part of the sport. I'm not going to pretend to understand it that well, but I know what I don't know, right? And I know that Dahlman has to be a signal caller as the center. Thuney's helping him out there. And then Caleb, as a sophomore quarterback, is responsible for making sure that they're on the same page with him. And then the receivers on the same page and the running backs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that timing and that patience, I remember my mom told me when I was really young that, and we had a sign in the house that actually read this, but it said patience is a virtue. And I've been thinking about that a ton, especially the first 3 weeks of this NFL season, because you have to exercise that patience with quarterbacks. I was listening to a sound bit on Twitter from Colin Cowherd and Tom Brady were talking, and Cowherd said with, the development of quarterbacks now, we used to give them 3 to 4 years to figure it out. Now he's arguing that you have to figure it out by Thanksgiving in your second year. And that's just too fast of a timeline. It's way too fast of a timeline because you can have all of those reps growing up, but ultimately you're playing high school and college football. And the NFL is a very, very different ballgame. It's much faster, it's much stronger, it's much scarier, and there's a lot more eyes on you. So that pressure, it's real, right? And we see guys fold under it. And then the other part of the patience is that you have to have patience for the organization, because quarterback is such a delicate and sensitive position that everything around you has to be going right, unless you're literally Tom Brady and you can throw to guys like Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, who are 5th and 6th round picks, and turn them into Hall of Famers. The offensive line has to be right. The play caller has to be right. The field conditions have to be correct. The defense you're going against, you have to be able to exploit them and understand coverages. You have to have weapons to throw to and to lean on and to rely on and trust in, like an Odunze, like a DJ Moore, like a Komet. And I feel like we're getting there to an extent. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions about the rest of the season, but I was really happy with how it looked today and was disappointed in how the press covered the first 2 weeks because they just didn't have the patience. Like I can't imagine giving up on a guy 20 starts into his career. Like, look at Mahomes. Look at his first 2 weeks. He is one of the best play callers of all time in Andy Reid. He has had all the success in the world over the last 6 to 7 years. 5 Super Bowl appearances, 3-2 in those Super Bowls. And it's not going very well for him right now. And if it's not going very well for him right now in 2025, then I think we should grant a little bit more credence to the guys that got compared to him coming out of college, like a Caleb. I'm not comparing the two at all. I think Patrick is, a rocket of an arm, but there are some similarities that you can see when they're playing. I remember when Caleb was coming out that my identity, or what I would identify as like a perfect modern quarterback, would be somebody that is both a surgeon and an artist. And what I mean by that is you have to be a surgeon from the pocket. You have to understand coverages, understand your concepts, and be able to, hit that first step in your drop and rip it and play point guard like a Jared Goff. Like, that's one of the items that you need, or one of the elements that you need to be a good quarterback in this league. I think you see it from Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Stafford. But then you also have to be an artist too. And you have to have a little bit of chaos to your artistry. And I think that's what Caleb has shown that he's capable of, and was too reliant upon for most of his career thus far, right? I think that he got really invested in and borderline obsessed with that rush, that feeling of escaping pressure, evading it, getting out of the pocket, and having everybody in the stadium's eyes on him as he's outside running full speed. And that's just a dangerous world to live in as an NFL quarterback, because if you can do that, that's great, but that cannot be your first option. It has to be a last resort. And too often he was abandoning the pocket too early, and that was his first option. So I think we saw more of it today, where he was standing in the pocket and then using his legs as the last resort, picking up the first down with his speed. He's also kind of like Mahomes in the way where he's bigger than he appears, right? Like when he's running at a defensive back, like he might not slide every time. He might drop a shoulder like Baker and get his team a little bit fired up, which I really dug. He's just bigger than you might expect him to be for a guy that paints his nails, literally. So I'm just very, very happy, and I needed to record this moment because who knows? Like, it could disappear next weekend against the Raiders, who didn't look great today against the Commanders and Mariota. So there's even more hope going into that one. But I'm hopeful. I'm happy, and I feel like that this is just a moment in time where there is a page being turned to a degree. I think Ben Johnson is the guy. I know Ben Johnson is the guy. You can see it in the innovation of the play calling, but I was curious about who he was as a person. Didn't really know too much about him as a person before he became the Bears head quarterback. And, you watch the press conferences and you can only glean so much from the preseason. I think Hard Knocks would have been a disaster to have again as a Bears fan, but that would have been a great way to get to know our coach a little bit better. But I think today was the best way to get to know him, right? You see the locker room after the game, and he's got this whole speech just ready to roll. He's handing out the game balls, and yeah, man, he's the guy. He's the one. So this is dangerous to be talking like this, but I'm very confident in those two and the marriage between them, and I think that we can all kind of breathe a sigh of relief because we know that it's there now. Like, it's a fact. Caleb is capable of, throwing 4 touchdowns in a game, going for north of 250 yards, commanding the offense. Even the last touchdown to DJ Moore, where he's getting outside the pocket and throwing to the back of the end zone, like, that's that artistry that we're talking about. But then the one to Luther Burton off the flea flicker, that's just very creative by Ben Johnson, but not a lot of people can make that throw. I think that's the most air yards thrown thus far in the season so far on a completion. And he barely got to plant his feet on that because the toss back from Swift was like so high in the air that he just had to launch it. And he did. And he flicked it. He has that arm talent. So yeah, man, it feels good to be a Bears fan right now. And that's not something you've been able to say for a lot of your life. So bask in it for now. Tread the water carefully. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. It's never that bad. It's probably not going to be as bad as 52-21 again throughout the season. One can hope. Defense looked a little bit better. The game's probably a little bit different if CeeDee Lamb doesn't get injured, which was a shame because he's just one of my favorite players in the league to watch week in and week out. But yeah, I feel really good about the Chicago Bears. So thank you guys for listening. We will try to find more time to do a weekly NFL podcast. Things have been busy the last couple of weeks. Ronnie's been acting. We'll figure out some time to get together and talk. We'll try to do an hour a week, but I honestly didn't want to talk about the NFL after the Bears were 0-2. So now I'm a little bit more motivated to do so. Really excited about it. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we will be back later this week with another edition of Rent Money and another edition of the Pop-Up Podcast, a conversation show about the NFL. All right, thank you guys for listening, and have a great week. Bear down.